So this topic that I'm presenting today, possibly you saw also during the Excite. So if you can just raise the thumbs up if you were part of this Excite session on the dev stage this year. Okay. Good. So there was a couple of you attending, but the good thing is it's not exactly the same thing that was there, but it's an extended version that we wanted to do with Andrei, but we were not allowed because it was just too long. So today we will not talk about 5, which was actually 6, but about 10 different problems that we saw during our time at Spryker and wanted to show you.
So did you make 4 extra mistakes in the 2 weeks after Excite, or?
Even more, but only 4 made it into the slide deck.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Having said that, let me try to move on. Couple of words about myself. So I'm with Spryker for the last 2.5 years as the head of cloud operations. For the last half a year, I'm also responsible for the cloud engineering. So all of the cloud stuff is basically going by me. In general, it's all about like making sure that the site is up and running, right? Because that's what we understand by cloud. It's not that much about the features, but really to keep the lights on, to ensure that you guys, and especially the end customers, are able to provision all of this commerce solutions via our platform. And this session, it's called mistakes, right? But I think mistake is sometimes a very strong word. I think it's very much about challenges, quite frankly, that we are experiencing every single day, and also coming up with some ideas how to avoid those challenges. And how to not fall into those common pitfalls, how to be able to be more efficient and make sure that your projects run faster. So we start always with the same thing, right? It's the plan, right? So not having the right plan is always a challenge. So obviously, if you in the first place don't follow the plan, don't have the plan, but rather look at your immediate thing, it's more of a firefighting, right? So you basically solve the thing right now, but it basically can end up later on with some problems with scalability, right? So the solution that's good for now to avoid this problem isn't necessarily something that will scale well on production. Also, some of the integration landscape, right, that basically you can miss as part of this thing can also cause some problems, right? So that's basically where it's definitely very visible for us in the projects that we see. So obviously, in the first place, plan well in advance, right? So as you guys likely run already a couple of Spryker projects, you know, and not only Spryker projects, you should very well know what are the things that you should look for, right? So what are the things so on. And it's always good to have some kind of a baseline plan for that, right? Obviously, all of the projects have its specifics, which is good to enrich always, but having this kind of plan is always a good idea, and also validate against how this thing progresses. There is this target architecture that Spryker is also pitching very heavily for, and it's a very good option also for you guys to prepare a good target architecture definition that includes all of those functional and non-functional requirements, all of those integrations that you have, the bird eye diagram, and all of the known risks and challenges that at some point it's good to keep track on and address. And obviously, if you should have any problem with that, Spryker is always there to help. And the Spryker SES services like project launch guidance, and business requirement deep dive are there to help you with resolving those. Number 2, NFRs. So obviously, we have the plan, but then the requirements come into the game, right? So it's some of the stuff that is quite obvious, and usually when we talk about commerce business, the business comes, right? We want to have the super promotions being supported, or the good search, or whatever, right? But there's also a lot of those NFRs that are out there that are very often missed, right? And those that we saw very prominently being missed in the past is, for example, geo-presence. So setting a site in Frankfurt to serve the customer in Australia isn't likely a good idea, because those things usually end up in a very poor latency and performance that the customer, the end users, basically, they don't like it at all, right? Ignoring or downplaying the data pipelines. So that's a big thing that we also noticed in the DONS production or development infrastructure. Everything works well. There are small data sets, but then you go into the production and suddenly the big product catalog that needs to be imported takes ages, right? Which isn't really accepted by the business, right? So those kind of things, it's good to identify earlier and keep notice of that. And obviously performance and scalability, like the typical NFRs, right? To make sure that those are also well tracked, and you keep it in mind that maybe you start small right now, but this site that you're preparing right now for this one region, for this one market, ultimately should be also used in 20 other markets, for example, right? And then obviously this demand and some of the solutions that you put in place here maybe won't work as efficiently as they used out there. So obviously define those project NFRs, document them, and when you make any architectural decisions, development decisions, always connect those decisions with those NFRs. Is this what you're really looking for, able to fulfill those NFRs? Is there anything that's missing here? If there are any exceptions, you need to fine-tune the NFRs, that's also fine, but just make sure that you basically remember about those and you put them into the account when you review them. And again, you are not alone with that stuff. Spryker SES services are there, and the project launch guidelines or business requirements deep dive are there to help you also to identify those and make sure that any important one isn't missed. Late performance and scalability measures, which is a bit of the outcome of these NFRs ones. It can happen. You basically are live, and then you see that things go wrong, right? Or you are about to go live, and suddenly all of those things go very slow, right? The data pipelines are not as quick as expected. The site isn't responding as expected, and so on and so forth, right? So the later you do, the more work it is to refactor all of that stuff, right? And there are no really silver bullets in this thing, right? So there are some quick fixes that you can sometimes apply, right? But basically, it's already pretty late, right? And that's impacting your production side and all of that stuff. So lack of this live system monitoring, right? That's definitely a bit of a problem, right? It's always a bit embarrassing, right? When the customer is telling you that your site is running slow, right? So having this kind of monitoring and be able to what's going on there, so on, is very important. Always consider this explosive traffic, search events, right? So your business team is about to run a serious marketing campaign offering your products by 50% discount. That likely will trigger some traffic, right? And those guys usually also do anticipate some specific traffic. Take it into account, plan for that, and make sure that the infrastructure and the solution is really ready to sustain this traffic. Yes. About the quick fixes, I already spoke. So what to do about this thing? Obviously, always monitor performance. I think it's a very good habit to always, with each of the releases, validate what is the performance. Is there any impact on the performance with the latest edition of the code? Additional trainings by the Spryker Academy definitely can also help for Spryker-specific performance considerations. And as well, some of the Spryker SES services to allow you to better prepare for those things in terms of scale-up scenarios checks and volume stress testing to be better prepared. Security, which is obviously a big problem nowadays, as for many companies being actively attacked, right? Every single day we see those attacks. I can tell you at Spryker Cloud, we also every single day actually get reports about some malicious scanning happening on our environment, some attempts to access the environments and so on. So security really is a very important thing, and it has a significant impact on the company brand and ultimately also on the business, right? So failing to implement those things can be extremely costly. That's very important, right? So doing some kind of a shortcuts in security can really backfire very badly at you, right? So that's not a good idea, right? To at least some doors open, because those guys will exploit it, right? I said there's a number of scanners going out there, the bots, that are really looking for those known vulnerabilities. Leaving the security checks for until they go live, which usually is the case, because obviously there are this business pressure for delivering the new thingy, isn't a good idea as well, because then ultimately you run into some problems. You need to quickly update, you need to quickly to upgrade all of the libraries and so on, and that's obviously a pain, right? So you, if possible, avoid it. Spryker has a very good document around the Spryker security guidelines, which focuses on Spryker specifics, how to secure the Spryker projects. If you don't know it, highly advised to get know of that. And obviously don't pick the single ones, but because it's like a chain, right? It's the chain is as good as the weakest element of the chain. So all of those things really need to come together, right? And obviously, while infrastructure is our domain, so we are there to support and make sure that the infrastructure is secure. Everything that is application related, it's on your end, right? So this is a bit of a cross dependency between us, but also something that's very important that we need to count on each other, basically, right? Here, keeping the project up to date, as mentioned earlier, this is basically this updates. That's good to do it on a regular basis. I hope you guys are aware of this upgrader solution that we have in place that should allow you to upgrade quicker and with less effort. So that's very good stuff. And ultimately, also the code review service that we offer can also unleash some of the security challenges in your project. Missing pre-production testing. Yes, so we are basically pushing something to production because especially it's some kind of a hot fix. And suddenly we fix this thing, but we mess up some other things, right? Which can be the case, unfortunately. So do not go too short with this thing, right? It's always good to make this kind of tests and make sure it's always part of the whole life cycle and testing these things well in advance. This can be, as said, this very drastic example of production being immediately down because there was a typo or whatever else that was in the code that suddenly broke everything. But it could be also something more impacting the performance, right? So there was some kind of additional code that you did for your development that was very nice on your local machine where you were trying to run a couple of calls. But then with all of the production traffic, suddenly your site immediately slows down or even goes down. Defining this test plan, right? And really following it for every single thing that you release to production, it's a very good habit, right? Ideally having some pipeline that basically validates all that stuff for you before going there. Scheduling some tests, ideally before every big release on a production-like environment, including the production-like traffic. It's obviously also a very good idea just to narrow down any bottlenecks and be sure that there is no performance impact of the changes that were implemented. And again, the Spryker SES service performance check is there to help you in case you should get stuck. This one is one of this new as well, lengthy cloud environment setup, which is very close to my heart because that's the cloud operations domain. Many of you complain about the duration of how long does it take to provision an environment in cloud, which is a very valid concern. But at the same time, it's a bit of this the situation that you see here on the screen, right? So we can do it, but we need also you to do it, right? So there's this cross dependency that we all need to work on, right? So we need from you the deploy file, and the deploy file sometimes contains errors. So there are some typos, there are some errors that we need to fix together, and that's basically takes a bit of time to get it resolved. And also the shared responsibility model, where you are responsible for something, we're responsible for something, can also trigger some problems. Specifically, if we talk about, for example, DNS setup, right? If you're owning the DNS, it's always good that you have this guy handy that can do the DNS changes. If not, then sometimes we are getting stuck because there is a need to adjust something in the DNS, but we cannot do it because we need to wait for this guy on your end to make it done. So my recommendations here, validating the deploy file beforehand. Always, if we can avoid this back and forth between our team and yours, it's always quicker and it's better. And make sure that when you decide to go one way or the other, follow the RACI that we have published also in our documentation to ensure that you know what you're responsible for, what we are responsible for, and also be then clear on the plan that you are following. Go lives that can be sometimes cumbersome, hopefully not in your case. Obviously, if you go for a big bang, it's always a challenge, right? So this kind of we work for 2-3 years in a basement and we come up with a super solution that works from day one. Usually it's not the best idea, right? So the sooner you go live, even with an MVP, with limited capabilities, it's always better. So focusing on this quick launch is a good idea all in all, right? But at the same time, sometimes because of this pressure, you miss some of those problems and you need to figure out what to do about that stuff, right? Assuming that it will be a super easy go live is not a good idea. Usually it's always good to have people around and be available to address it. Also in Spryker side, we always have people, when we know about the go live, that are in standby and they know exactly what to expect for a given project, right? To help a bit with that, there's the go live checklist that Spryker publishes. It's available in the Spryker documentation in a high level, but I know that also as part of the projects, our services guys also have, let's say, more structured one, some kind of really checklist. And this kind of thing is really a good point to start with, right? It's very generic because it sometimes touches things that are not necessary in each of the projects, but at the same time, they are a really good start basically to review what you should check before going live. And ultimately, if you feel it's really very important go live and you would like to have some support for that from our side, there is a service called Go Live Guidance and Hypercare Support, which allows to have somebody around to help you preparing for the go live, as well as being there after the go live to stabilize the solution, because the stabilization always needs to happen in that case. Good, destructive pipeline. The name says everything, right? It's destructive and it can really destroy things, especially if by accident people pull the trigger and do it in production live environment, then you cause a lot of fire. So that's not a good thing to do. It can do a lot of harm, destroying a lot of data, caches, and so on. And to recover from that takes time, right? That's usually done by a human error, right? So somebody was already pretty sleepy, tired after a hard day of work, and he clicked not the normal, but the destructive one. And we missed this thing to approve it. That's a very bad thing to happen. Unfortunately, we saw it in the past. So first of all, definitely disable it. As soon as you're done with the major development efforts, I would definitely advise you, especially for live environments, and that's part of the Go Live checklist, by the way, as well. Disable this thing. You request it via the support portal, and our guys are happy to disable it for you. And the second thing, restrict the access also to AWS environment, right? So with the least access rule, right, the least people have the access to the environment, there is less chance that some damage will be done. I see I'm about the end of the time, so let me speed up a bit. Spryker specific knowledge. Definitely not for you guys here on the call, because you are very interested and looking for new ways to learn about Spryker. But obviously there's Spryker can be quite complex, let's say like that, right? And being just a regular developer usually is not enough. And it's good to invest some more time to understand better what Spryker is there. Specifically setting up a completely new team of even experienced developers, but not having the Spryker background can become a challenge. And this gaps we saw also with some of the inexperienced teams in the past running into common pitfalls, things that the, let's say, experienced architect would immediately figure out, right? So my, in general, idea and ask would be to have always somebody around, right, from this experienced teams that can also help and strengthen the more junior colleagues to help with that. Having the architect, especially experienced architect, as said, around to also, like make sure that all of those things, all of those components work together. That's also a good thing to have, which is not always the case. Sometimes it's just a group of developers that need to quickly get to a solution. And that in the long term can lead to some performance problems or some scalability problems that definitely it's not a good thing. So how to remedy it? Do trainings and pass the trainings on the Spryker Academy. I think we are publishing more and more of those. And so far, as I heard, it's a good way to really gain this Spryker knowledge. If you are missing still some things and you know about those things, that's okay. There are SES services that are around also to help you with the given things and also bring the required experts into the game to make sure that that's there. Hackathons that were already mentioned earlier as well. That's a very good thing as well to participate in. It allows you to also connect and network with some other colleagues, other developers that are out there that have different experience and can also enrich your skill set. And the community forum is always a good thing to also exchange with those guys offline about some different challenges you're seeing and also getting together to some good solutions. Last but not least, not reaching out to support. I'll go very quickly. different tooling that we have, but this tooling is not always very efficiently used. So sometimes you guys reach out to us, but we are not really able to. We need to use this tooling to get to that, while you could basically quicker get to the solution. So that would be one point. Not detailed enough troubleshooting. By that I mean that sometimes we get a very generic thing like it doesn't work in this area, and to get really like what doesn't work, like how it should work, and so on. It's pretty cumbersome and it requires a bit of back and forth between the two parties. And the support case is lacking detail. It's also a bit like this what I mentioned just now. So we get something, but we miss, for example, which environment it is, right? Which user you used, when exactly it happened, stuff like that, right? So that's basically those things. So in order to avoid it and also get quicker a solution, right? Because that's basically what you guys are interested in, to get a quick solution to your problems. If possible, do the thorough troubleshooting yourself, because this way around you don't need us, and you are even quicker with the solution than with us on board, because you always need to bring the other guy on board, right? We have the logs, obviously, that are exposed to you, which are, I think, the best source of knowledge what's going on in your system, but also APM, right? Application performance monitoring. With that thing, you can really understand very well all of the bottlenecks that are ongoing, all of the customer journeys, and what's actually getting broken right now. And when you need still to reach us, then be really very detailed. Just that we open this thing and we immediately are up to speed like you are, right? We don't need to ask you some follow-up questions, but we immediately know like what's happening, when it happens, and so on and so forth. And we know how to reproduce it and what exactly you expect from that. So this way around, we can quicker get to you with some solution and make sure that you guys are unblocked. So key takeaways, always look holistically, right? So none of the projects is just like the security project, the go live project, or whatever. It's everything all together, right? It's all about the whole thing. If you don't consider everything, there's a good chance that some of those things will be the one thing that actually will make it very challenging for you to go live. Planning well in advance to avoid any surprises, introduce some buffers, expect the unexpected. That's always a good strategy. And leverage all of the resources that you have. Don't be shy to ask. Don't be shy to use some of our academy courses. Ask for some more trainings and so on and so forth. All of that can just make your project successful. And that's what I want to say today. Just many happy, successful go lives. And sorry for running over.